What if Module Yuji Itadori was in Shibuya? Now, I wanted to do this as a reborn story at first, but I decided to keep it simple and fun for this channel. Most of my timelines stop early on my second channel, but for this one, I wanted to switch it up a little. So let me know if you guys like this JJK content down below, but let's get into this. So in this version, I'm not doing a full reset because that would just stop Satoru Gojo from getting sealed, and that changes everything too early. Instead, Module Yuji replaces the original Yuji right after Gojo gets sealed. So everything still starts the same, but now the strongest version of Yuji is in play. If you don't know what Module Yuji is, he's basically the strongest version of Yuji in this timeline, stronger than everyone, even Ryomen's Sukuna. But anyway, you guys already know that, so right after Gojo gets sealed, Yuji is still with Meimei, but this time everything changes. Yuji remembers everything that happens in Shibuya, so when the group split up, he already knows where he needs to go. He moves ahead and heads straight toward the Choso fight before things get bad. In the original timeline, this fight pushes Yuji to his limit, but here it's completely different. Yuji understands Choso's blood manipulation and doesn't let the fight drag out. He closes the distance instantly, overwhelms him with speed and strength, and shuts him down quickly. He doesn't kill Choso because he already knows Choso switches sides later, so he just puts him down and moves on without wasting time. Since Yuji isn't injured or slowed down, this lets him move to the next major fight much earlier. He heads toward the group fighting Dagon inside his domain, where Megumi Fushiguro, Maki Zenin, the Zenin clan head, and Nanami are already struggling. This is where things change a lot because Yuji can enter the domain without needing outside help and immediately shifts the fight. Inside the domain, Yuji isn't affected the same way as everyone else. He pushes through the attacks, closes in on Dagon, and starts overwhelming him. Dagon doesn't get the chance to fully control the fight anymore because Yuji is constantly on him. With Yuji there, the group doesn't get overwhelmed and Dagon gets taken out much faster than before. Right after that, Toji Fushiguro shows up like in the original timeline, but now the situation is different. Instead of focusing mainly on Megumi, Toji immediately recognizes Yuji as the biggest threat and targets him. Yuji and Toji clash, and this fight is way more intense than before, but since this is Module Yuji, he's stronger and more controlled. He keeps up with Toji's speed and eventually overpowers him, ending the fight faster than the original timeline. Then Jogo arrives like usual, but this is another major change, because Yuji never loses control and never gets force-fed fingers. The whole Ryomen's Sukuna rampage never happens. That means Jogo doesn't get the chance to interact with Sukuna at all. Instead, he has to face Yuji directly. Jogo is strong, but against this version of Yuji, it's not enough. Yuji overwhelms him with speed, lands multiple black flashes, and mixes in shrine techniques like cleave and dismantle to finish the fight quickly. Jogo gets taken out without causing the level of destruction he did before. After taking down Jogo, Yuji doesn't stop moving. He already knows what's next, so he heads straight toward the Mahedo situation before it can even fully develop. At this point in the original timeline, the overtime guy Kento Nanami has already been heavily injured and ends up running into Mahito, which leads to his death. But in this version, Yuji arrives earlier. By the time he reaches Mahito, the fight doesn't play out like the original timeline at all. There's no long chase, no back and forth, and no moment where Yuji is struggling to understand Mahito's ability. Yuji already knows how idol transfiguration works, so he doesn't give Mahito any time to adapt or set anything up. Mahito tries to use idol transfiguration the moment Yuji gets close, but it doesn't matter. Yuji instantly closes the distance and lands a clean black flash combined with cleave, and that single hit completely destroys Mahito before he can split or evolve. The fight ends almost instantly, and one of the biggest threats in Shibuya is gone just like that. And because Yuji handled the earlier fights faster, especially the Dagon fight, this directly affects what happens to the overtime guy Kento Nanami. So instead of dying, Nanami actually survives Shibuya. In this timeline, he's still injured, but he makes it out alive, which is a huge change going forward. Right after Mahito is taken out, Kenjaku still shows up like in the original timeline, but now he's walking into a completely different situation. Instead of a weakened Yuji, he's facing the strongest version at full power. Kenjaku immediately realizes the difference and doesn't try to drag the fight. Yuji attacks right away, forcing Kenjaku on defense from the start, and since Yuji already knows what he's capable of, he doesn't hold anything back. Kenjaku tries to create space and uses techniques to control the fight, but Yuji keeps closing the gap and doesn't let him set anything up. This puts Kenjaku in a bad position very quickly. At this point, Kenjaku makes the smart decision and escapes. He uses the situation around him to create an opening and leaves earlier than he planned because staying any longer would risk him getting taken out completely. With Kenjaku gone, the entire Shibuya incident basically collapses from that point forward. There's no backup plan, no second phase, and no major threat left that can slow Yuji down. After everything settles, the sorcerers are left in a much better position than in the original timeline. There's way less damage, more people are still alive, and most importantly, they can now focus on unsealing Satoru Gojo much earlier. Because of that, Gojo doesn't stay sealed nearly as long, and once he comes back, the balance of power shifts completely back in favor of the sorcerers. And from this point on, the entire story changes. Now moving into the perfect preparation arc, this part mostly stays the same. Module Yuji Itadori doesn't change anything here because it doesn't mess with the overall outcome. Maki still goes through everything with the Zenin clan and gets stronger, so this arc basically plays out the same. Now moving into the Culling game arc, this is where things get tricky because this arc might not even happen the same way or at all. After Shibuya ends and Satoru Gojo gets unsealed much earlier, the first big change is how everyone reacts to Yuji Itadori. When Yuji and Gojo meet again, Yuji is clearly happy to see him, but at the same time, he already knows everything that's coming next, so instead of keeping quiet, he tells Gojo about the future, about Kenjaku, and about the Culling game. Gojo doesn't ignore this, because after seeing how different Shibuya played out, he understands Yuji isn't guessing, so he actually takes it seriously and he starts planning around it immediately, instead of waiting for things to happen. Megumi is more cautious at first, but once Yuji proves he knows what's coming, he accepts it and starts working with him instead of questioning. Maki Zenin doesn't really care how Yuji knows everything, she just sees that he handled Shibuya and that he's stronger than everyone else, so she's fine with it. The rest of the group reacts the same way, confused at first, but once Yuji keeps being right, they stop questioning it and follow his lead, and this makes the entire group way more organized than in the original timeline. Now the biggest change is what happens with Kenjaku. Since Gojo is unsealed early and already knows the plan, he doesn't wait around. He goes after Kenjaku immediately, and this is where everything shifts, because if Gojo reaches Kenjaku early, there's a very high chance Kenjaku gets taken out before he can fully start the Culling game, and in this version, that's exactly what happens. Gojo finds him and kills him before everything can be set up properly. Because of that, the Culling game doesn't fully start the same way, and there's no real reason for it to continue as a full event. But there are still players and revived sorcerers already in place from what Kenjaku started before he died, so they still have to deal with that, and this is where the arc turns into more of a cleanup process. Instead of everyone splitting up and struggling like the original timeline, the group moves with a plan. Gojo handles the biggest threats immediately, while Yuji moves through colonies faster than anyone else, clearing out strong opponents before they can build momentum. Any reincarnated sorcerer that shows up gets overwhelmed quickly because now they're not fighting tired or confused sorcerers. They're fighting a fully prepared team with the strongest sorcerer back and Module Yuji already above everyone. Fights that were supposed to be long and dangerous get ended almost instantly. Yuji handles multiple opponents back to back without slowing down, using Black Flash, blood manipulation, and shrine techniques to shut fights down quickly, while Gojo makes sure nothing on a higher level becomes a threat. Megumi and the others still fight, but now they're not fighting to survive, they're fighting with backup and support so nobody gets pushed to the brink like before. Maki especially benefits from this, because instead of barely surviving her fights, she dominates them with way less risk. So instead of the Culling game being a deadly survival event, it becomes controlled cleanup, where every remaining threat gets removed one by one without the situation ever getting out of control. And finally, the Shinjuku Showdown arc never happened, because Module Yuji doesn't have Ryomen Sukuna inside of him, and the original Yuji that Sukuna was tied to isn't here. So there's no Gojo versus Sukuna fight, no final battle like the original timeline, and the entire endgame of the story is completely different. So since that arc never happens, and everything gets solved, Module Yuji gets sent back to his original future, and the Yuji he replaced comes back with everything already handled. All that pain and suffering never happens, because almost everyone survives in this timeline, and Ryomen Sukuna just stays with him instead of taking over. And that's how this story ends. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this JJK video. Make sure you go check out What If Jinwoo Had All His Memories from the Beginning, or check out What If Gojo and other anime characters were in Demon Slayer, since those are some of my favorite videos.